And to this day self-delusion and self-lie and self-deception continues by the people. Who decided to play a mental game about James Tour as if he promotes God of the Gaps? I of course respect people's right and free will to do so. This tells me more about what mental space people are in, rather than any dedication to the truth or willingness to acknowledge huge issues with origin of life research. Specifically data that points to that there is no natural self-assembly of any chemistry beyond a certain point to make a complex chemistry, not even mentioning further evolving into a living cell and beyond it. This also was proven by microevolution countless times in the labs. There are laws of nature that allow certain spontaneous assembly, but to a very limited state. Beyond that nothing takes place on its own, as their own research in the labs have demonstrated countless times. If you can't do it by having sophisticated intelligence, how are you expecting nature to do it, who has no self-awareness, thus not able to predict and make adjustments, not even a primitive form of consciousness as your ideology claims? It's cognitive dissonance. You, with your more sophisticated intelligence, are less smart than mindless nature. Where is logic in that? Whoever has set this system up is beyond your intellect a billion times. By using 3D software I can create a natural environment. It doesn't mean it was not created. It may look very realistic if you will walk in a virtual reality goggles set, but it is still created. This philosophical implication you cannot simply wish away. There is nothing that says that creating an environment that resembles nature is not a possibility. Human beings have self-awareness and creative ability to imitate such an environment with no issue, using many tools they have come up with. Saying it could not have happened via some great mind is a flaw in logic, when humans do it all the time by using mind. The problem with materialists, as with any people who accept ideology, where worldview is fixed by being beyond questioning, is that they believe natural explanation is reality. They ignore the fact that any view exists in the mind and not out there in the outer world. They blindly and in ignorance claim that we somehow have not yet discovered how nature, being completely unconscious, makes all these complexities. This, of course, believing in a square and trying to use science to fit scientific data being a sphere into a mental box of a square. Saying, well, it does not fit now, but one day we will discover data that will. This, as was said many times to people who are stuck in this delusion, is not going to happen, as in ever. You align yourself with data. The universe is not going to comply with your mind. These people refuse to critically think, they assume, as James Tour points to this all, and then they are looking for evidence to support their assumption. Once they find something, they extrapolate from it. Their goal is not to adjust their thinking, their assumption, but rather to validate it. They may make a few changes here and there, but they never will question the overall view they have. They have done exactly the same thing they are accusing religious people of, specifically Christians, of having a God of the Gaps approach. They have defined an overall belief in a form of natural explanation. Then they are seeking to use science to validate it. It does not matter if there is no data available to prove all or some specific aspects of the natural explanation. They assume the gap has a natural explanation by definition. They just have not yet discovered how exactly unconscious nature does this. Is this not God of the Gaps approach? They already decided that their overall assumption is by definition correct and true. If you yourself cannot fill the gaps and explain how natural processes have done this, why are you accusing religious people of not being able to fill the gaps if you cannot either? And on top, demanding to stop defining the overall assumption that God did it? Can you not see the hypocrisy of this? Hypocrisy that has nothing to do with science. James Tour said he generally believes, as many Christians do, in the nature of God being behind the existence of the universe. Never stopped a religious person from making a scientific discovery so far. Look at the Arab world in the past, as one example, that gave so much to the world in terms of science. Nevertheless, even if you have an assumption that God created this world or there must be a natural explanation, is this a scientific data-driven backed-up assumption? No, it's personal, because science doesn't work this way. It's not a philosophy, it's an observation-based approach. It doesn't draw conclusions either. There is no final mental box, no final assumption, no final data to discover. Belief systems make conclusive statements, and then people who believe in them seek ways to prove these statements to be absolute and unchangeable. You cannot make a final claim and then try to fit some discovered data to support your assumptions. And yes, natural explanation is a mental worldview and not a reality. That's why it's a failure of what materialists, especially atheists, who are vigorously opposing theism, try to do. They have literally hijacked science to prove their final statement of natural worldview. They claim it's unquestionable reality and that it's the only one possible. Their belief system at this point is the same as any other religion that people worship, and is likewise infallible with infallible doctrines. As a common example, you cannot question the theory of evolution, you cannot question this or that. One of their unquestionable axioms of their belief system is that no consciousness, no mind, no intelligence and no information produced this world. If data contradicts their worldview, they refuse to acknowledge it and continue to find ways to explain it away. Of course, we can use the same logic materialists use. When they claim that this world was created naturally, we just don't know how. We can say, there is no God of the gaps. We just yet don't know how God did it, but we will in time, because science is an open expanding process. I trust you understand the funnies of this. It's unscientific to either claim a natural final explanation or God of the gaps, as both are just personal claims. There is nothing wrong with this, but it has nothing to do with science as a method of discovering the world around us.